The Earnestly Speaking podcast is a show that is founded on free-flowing conversation and may at times venture into mature subjects. Listener discretion is advised.
Yeah, Earnestly Speaking podcast. Let's get it. I'm a giant in New York, in Miami carry heat. So much more in store, my product can flood the street. Opinion Nation Godfather, CEO. Puff in the late 90s, gon' see me blow. Oh. Got my hustle on, no imitation of that. Army of untouchables, Opinion Nation staff. Never an off season, homie, check the numbers. Heart throb in my own right, supplying southern comfort. Earnestly speaking, my ego is well fed. Earnestly speaking, you're too evil and no threat. See, I'm like a hurricane, you're a mild breeze. Earnestly speaking, leaving Eli a dynasty. Shake!
Earnestly podcast coming to you live on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, at X now we call it. Is April 10th, 2025. Of course, doing a weekly with our man Greg Hrinya, NBA insider, analyst, author. My man, oh my God, hold on, my Wi-Fi looks like it's gonna mess up again. Don't give me this. Well, we're doing a live show. Wi-Fi, please hold up for the next 2 hours, please. Thank you, Greg. How you doing?
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing very well. We have a lot of NBA stuff to get to right now, as we are now officially a week away from the start of the NBA. Well, technically, a little over a week for the playoffs. The play-in starts next Tuesday, but you know the play-in isn't the playoffs; it's still playoff adjacent. Want to call that? Yeah. Oh no, man. But anyway, if you watch the show live, of course, you want to comment during the show. We'll be here for the next hour or so. Feel free to comment in the chat, and we'll acknowledge your comments on the show here. We've got lots about today, of course. Luka Doncic makes his first return to Dallas since being traded to the Lakers in February. Lots of chaos going on the Denver Nuggets. And then we're going to do an NBA postseason storyline draft, 5 rounds. Nothing over the top. Each of us will pick 5 storylines we're most intrigued by in the upcoming playoffs, which will be here in the next week or so. Again, subscribe to the podcast. And by the way, I did a pod last night, like little overnight pod, like about 11:30 night time. And I asked you guys that I needed one more subscriber to get 400 on YouTube. And we got there this morning. So congratulations. Thank you to you guys. Whoever was the last subscriber that came in this morning, God bless you. Thank you. We had now 400 subscribers on YouTube. Continue subscribing to the podcast. We have our own channel at Earnestly Pod on YouTube. If you love the clips of the show on TikTok as well, too. We're on TikTok at Earnestly Pod as well. Of course, full episodes on the audio side at any Apple Podcast catcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. And of course, like I said, the video on YouTube as well. We're going to continue growing this channel with all the content we're doing there, basketball content. Of course, you have the wrestling show every week, WrestleMania season's here, all the good stuff we have going on Pike. So anyway, last night, Luka Doncic. Now, I know you missed it because you were actually traveling, wherever the hell you were this last couple days.
I was sleeping on a plane. I was sleeping on a plane between Minneapolis and Newark.
They didn't put the game on for you?
It was a smaller plane and barely had Wi-Fi, let alone video or anything like that. So I was out of the loop until I landed.
I gotta tell you. Oh, okay. Yeah, exactly. I gotta tell you, I watched the game. Obviously, I watched the intro, the video package. I look. I'm not a Mavericks fan by no means. In fact, as a Heat fan, I have a lot of disdain for the Mavericks, given our history against them. But I gotta tell you, watching that video, there's a lot of mixed emotions. On one hand, I was like, that's such a touching video they did for Luka. At the same time, it's like, it's all bullshit. You still trade him anyway. What does that matter? You still trade him. The top 3 player in the league, trade him to not only to trade him to the Lakers for. Okay, Anthony Davis is a great player, obviously, but come on, you could have gotten more back for a guy of Luka's caliber, But I remember tweeting, and I tweeted last night. I see him watching. He was watching the video. He's tearing up. I'm getting a little eyes welled up a little bit too because it's a very touching video. Then I said, "This dude's torching him tonight. He's gonna get 40 plus tonight," and he got 45 last night. So Luka, and by the way, I don't know if you watched even the highlights of the game, but he looks like he's in good shape. He looks like he's trimmed down. It's in trade.
He looks like he's in better shape than where I would say he was in against Dallas. But it's funny when you watch that tribute video, like my first reaction was when he was drafted. I'm like, oh wow, he looks like a different person. So I mean, like I think that's I still wouldn't say that he's in like tip top shape. And he might not that he needs to be. I mean, his game is not predicated on athleticism. So I mean it's more smarts, shot making, backing guys down in the paint and all that. So I mean, I don't know that he needs to be 40 or 50 pounds lighter, but he definitely at 26 looks different than he looked at 18. But yeah, that was a good video. I think the most impactful part to me was his reaction to it. I wouldn't have expected him. I mean, I guess just because of how they treated him on his way out, I'm surprised at how emotional he got. I know that it changed his life being in Dallas, but given the fact that not only did they trade him, but the Mavericks didn't miss an opportunity to bash him out the door. So for them to do a lot of bashing out the door and then play this touching tribute and see him get emotional, it was like for you, it was a lot of emotions for me because I'm like, I go back to what I said the day they made the trade. It's like, I really don't have a problem with them trading him. I just don't know why they didn't extract more out of the Lakers. Like, why did they leave the Lakers enough ammunition to then go out and try and trade for Mark Williams? Like, I feel like everything that would have gone for Mark Williams should have gone to them in that deal. So it wasn't just that it was a bad trade by getting rid of him. It was that they didn't get as much as they could have, which you mentioned before, and I still agree with.
Yeah. I wonder how much more leash. And look, I think Nico Harrison's getting all the blame for this, obviously, and rightfully so. But I don't think he should be the only one getting blamed for this. I think that came from upstairs as well to Miriam Adelson, the new owners of the Mavericks, because clearly Mark Cuban, he was not a minority owner of the team, had no say in this because he said on record that he would not have done this at all. This would never been even on the table. You know,
and also one thing I don't want to cut you off, but one thing that I want to say about Mark Cuban is that I don't want to hear him complaining about this trade. If you didn't like it, don't sell the team. Like once you sell the team, you have relinquished your right to make those decisions. So
no, right. I think he understands that. I just think that he wouldn't. He's admitting that he would not have never even considered this route at all. I do wonder because obviously there's been a lot of talk about since the trade happened how like the fans are disgusted with the franchise and whatnot. I do wonder if that has translated into like season ticket sales being lower for next year and all this stuff, interest in the team going lower going to next year, whatnot. I am curious if that's going to be a thing, and if so, how big a leash does Nico Harrison have as the Mavericks president of basketball operations?
He probably has more of a leash than everyone else thinks because, to your point, I think that wasn't a decision that was just made by him. It wasn't like a rogue decision that caught ownership by surprise. I think they were on board with it. So I think it would be hypocritical for them to allow him to make that deal or support him making that deal and then fire him because of the ramifications of it. I think they have to own that part of it too. And going back to what I said before, like the reason why you try and extract more out of the Lakers is because then you can go out and add other players. You can, maybe you don't have Luka, but if you have Anthony Davis and two other guys, let's say, you can promote depth. And one thing I think that really killed Nico Harrison, killed the Mavericks, and look, and I've said it a million times, you don't want to bet on injury prone players, but like when Kyrie tore his ACL, I mean, that was pretty much where this was going to be headed. I mean, last night they start that game. They're not starting a point guard. Like they're bringing Dinwiddie off the bench. Like I guess they're running some approximation of like Najee Marshall and Klay Thompson as like ball handlers because they've got Davis starting, they've got Lively starting. Like they don't really have a true point guard playing, and they turned it over 19 times, and that was basically a huge difference in the game. They didn't actually shoot poorly. It's just that between turnovers and rebounds, they got crushed in that sense. So I mean, like what I would have wanted to see was them getting more so they could have put together a better roster. But once Kyrie got hurt, I mean, they really like were destined for the play-in at best, and that's where they're residing now. But I think that that's an underappreciated aspect of this, that if AD had come back and Kyrie had been healthy, you could make the argument with all those wings around them that this would still be a very good team and probably a potentially dangerous team. But now with no real true point guard on the roster.
Oh,
You know,
I was saying that the trade, and I think you and I agreed on. So also
yeah.
when we were talking about in the immediate top contenders, we were looking at the Mavericks in the conversation but
Yeah.
also that's with the caveat that all the key pieces in here, of course, Kyrie and AD and Clay and all those ancillary pieces around the team will stay healthy. We looked at the team as this is a 2-year, 3-year window at most to win a championship, and we both agree to that, and a lot of people did actually too. And we look at the Lakers side of it as more so like building for the next 10 years, not for the next 1 or 2. Basically, the punting on the LeBron era, and let LeBron do his thing, how long he's here, in a year, 2 years, 3 years, and then we move on. But clearly, 2 months since a trade, the perception has changed drastically. Now Dallas, you don't know when you get Kyrie back. Most likely, I would say after the All-Star break next year. AD, who knows he's healthy at that point, because that's the story with him, all the time. And Clay hasn't been the same Clay, so it's one of those things where like it's a big gamble, And again, I'm with you. It wasn't about the trade that sucked. Obviously, the trade's bad because I don't give a crap who you are. You trade a guy of that caliber, a top 3 player in the league. You just went to NBA Finals from last year. That's a bad look. But then you don't get anything back for him. That makes no damn sense. So, it is what it is. By the way, I think the reason Luka was emotional and also mixed about that because I think he understands that there's a difference between the Dallas Mavericks, the front office and the executives and whatnot, and then the fans. I think he knows that most people, he has a approval rating in Dallas in the 90s. Okay, mm-hmm. So I think he knows that most people wanted him to stay. It was a decision by Adelson and Nico Harrison to do this, not the rest of the team, not the rest of the fan base. I think he knows that. That's probably why it was the mixed emotions thing there.
And also, I think, and you brought this up before, and it was a good point about him looking like he was in better shape. There's also the possibility or the reality that he's going to be better as a Laker than maybe he would have even been as a Maverick, despite all his accolades, just given that this might have been a wake-up call to him that like, oh, I need to reassess how I'm conducting myself as a pro because what I was doing got me shipped out of there. And so obviously he's a phenomenal talent, but maybe he realizes that if I don't take this seriously, like this is what the perception of me is. And so the Lakers are going to get the best version of him because maybe that was some sort of a wake-up call to him. I mean, he will wind up missing 31 games this year. So I think from the Mavericks standpoint, it's like we're gambling on him being injury prone. And ironically, they trade him and he's been healthy with the Lakers. And then AD gets hurt and Kyrie gets hurt and Clay's not the same. So, I mean, their gamble surely backfired. But to your point, I mean, Luka does look like he's in better shape, and maybe he wouldn't have been in that shape if he were still in Dallas.
Right. I'm glad we did the show today instead of Tuesday, because had we recorded the show Tuesday, we would have been missed this news. Michael Malone, Denver Nuggets head coach, fired by the team. Yes, it's Michael Malone, the Nuggets coach who did win a championship less than 2 years ago. We thought the Tyler Jenkins thing was a shocker a couple weeks ago in Memphis, given the timing and where the team was at, in the standings. Hold my beer. The Nuggets say, you know what, we do you one better. A legitimate title contender, with the best player in basketball on the same team, with literally 4 games go in the season for them, I think, when this happened. And I'm glad we waited today to do this podcast, because ever since the firing, the last 48 hours, we're hearing intel about what possibly happened. There's not dissension between him and the GM, who also got fired as well too. Funny, like both guys not getting along. So owner said, "You know what? You both gone." When do you see that? Really, be honest with you. What were your thoughts? Early thoughts on the move?
I mean, we discussed this prior to the season, and
you did actually. And keep talking. I'm finding the clip right now.
Are you putting the clip on
No,
now?
you can go. You can talk to me. I'm bringing it right
okay,
now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I thought that he was a dark horse to possibly lose his job, given that there seemed to be friction. And I think the biggest reason why is because people talk about, oh, they lost KCP, they lost Bruce Brown, they lost Jeff Green. Like, I think when you look at each of those guys individually and you look at the seasons that they're having now, I don't know that, or the seasons that they've had, I don't know that any one of those is like a groundbreaking or earth-shattering loss. I think it's just that Malone really preferred to play the vets, And Calvin Booth really leaned into a roster that was laden with young guys that he brought in. And I mean, you look at the way Jalen Pickett played last night against the Kings. It's like, oh, like obviously it's one game, but it's like, oh, maybe he should have been playing more, So I mean, it's like Julian Strother, Jalen Pickett, Peyton Watson, like Christian Brown has turned out to be a very good player, and we knew about that before the firing. But I think there was dissension in the sense that Malone wanted to play his vets, he wanted to keep his vets, and Calvin Booth wanted to go in a younger direction. And Calvin Booth's contract was ending. And as an ownership, you might look at it and say, there's dissension between them. We know we're not going to keep Calvin Booth because maybe we're not happy with the way that he's run things, and we're going to let a new GM come in and pick his own coach. I wasn't surprised by the firing, given that I made that prediction prior to the season. What surprised me?
Wait! Don't tease it, because if you're shocked by the firing of Mike Malone, then you should be shocked. If you've had this podcast, you shouldn't be shocked, because this same Greg Hrinya on this show in October of let me see what the date it was. It might have been October 14th, one of the first shows we did before the NBA season started. You teased this on one of the first segments of the year about Malone getting fired. Here's the clip from October for proof. Please play properly, please.
Like, I don't know that this is a hot take, but like, I don't even know if Michael Malone is going to make it through the season as their head coach.
What?
And the reason why I say that is because I don't think that he is on board with management and ownership letting a lot of these veterans go.
Wait, you're saying that he may quit?
No. I think that there could be like a power struggle and he could get fired.
Well, you'll be in the pot all year long, so we'll definitely keep an eye on that situation.
I mean, like, look, it's not that he's a bad coach. I just don't think that he's liked losing Bruce Brown, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Jeff Green. I think that Calvin Booth is sort of forcing a lot of these younger players on him by letting these other guys go. And I don't necessarily know that he's on board with that. And so we will see how that plays out over the course of an 82-game season.
Yeah. Did he make it 82 games? Did he make it 82 games? My guy.
He made it 78. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously it didn't surprise me. The timing surprised me. I would have expected, if this was going to happen, same thing with Taylor Jenkins. I would have expected it to happen sooner. I don't know that I was surprised, obviously, by the firing, but I would have expected it maybe not with a couple of days left in the regular season.
78 games and one nice haircut later, Greg Hrinya's prediction comes true. you had a little buff top there back in October. A little haircut since then.
Yeah.
No, for me, I look at this situation. First off, we'll break it down in a second. One of the reasons why there was contention was also recent, like this week and the last couple of weeks, was that Mike Malone was a massive Russell Westbrook advocate. Wanted to play more minutes, this and that, and there was some friction with that situation. Obviously, Russell Westbrook is a very polarizing figure in the NBA. He's a Hall of Famer. He'll get there once it's all said and done, but very polarizing in terms of style of play, even late in his career. And I guess that was the hill he's willing to die on, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it the other day. I'm like, I could see a world where Westbrook isn't in the league next year, and not because he can't still play. It's that he thinks that he's the player of 2014, of 2015, of 2016, of 2017. Like, we're now a decade later. He's given that he can't really shoot. I don't know that he's willing to accept a role. Kind of like Carmelo Anthony, like as he got older, it was a struggle to get him to accept a role. I think it wasn't until he got to Portland that he really bought into being like a third or a fourth wheel. I mean, Russell Westbrook isn't MVP Russell Westbrook anymore. And so his lack of shooting, his defensive lapses, like, you need a guy who's going to be a role player to be able to hit shots and to be able to, I was watching a clip this morning of just a disastrous sequence that he had that spans, I don't know, 45 seconds of game time of, terrible miss, then getting lost on the defensive end, just sort of sagging by the paint while Doug McDermott is in the corner, hits a three, then goes down the other end, tries to throw a lob, gets picked off, turned over, turns into a basket. And it's like, is this the guy that Michael Malone was, is that the hill that he's willing to die on? Unfortunately for him, I guess it was. But I mean, I'm watching that game last night and I'm like, I think they're probably better off when they get in the playoffs playing Pickett and not playing Westbrook at all. But I mean, the problem is that he still thinks he's MVP Russell Westbrook. How's he going to take that? So, I mean, I don't know that his ego is such that I'd want that around my organization, which is why I don't know that he really has much of a future. And look, he's had a long career. He's had a Hall of Fame career. Like you said, he'll be a first ballot Hall of Famer when his time comes. But how does he help the Nuggets win a title this year or compete for a title? I don't really see that. And I think that's where Calvin Booth was. Like, we have these younger guys that we'd rather be playing. And I thought that Jokic was on board with them bringing Westbrook in prior to the season. Granted, the expectation versus the reality. I mean, we've seen a couple teams try and move on from him pretty quickly. So I just think that it's him aging and not recognizing where he should be on the team, which is an elite level role player and not the MVP that he used to be a decade ago.
Well, and to your point, there's a report in The Athletic today that came out that says that he's actually unsure of returning to the team next year, despite his he holds a player option at $3.4 million for next season. So, to your point, if that is true, then we really could be seeing the end of Westbrook here beyond this season, barring a massive playoff outburst here, of course. To me, I look at the situation as this. Okay, the timing is god awful, and it's not like it's bad enough when the Grizzlies did it, because the Grizzlies they're not a title contender, but they're definitely a playoff team. It's still weird timing, but Denver is a title contender. Denver is one of the bubble teams I look at, like my championship bubble. Who are the 5 teams? Because I have right now, I think it's 5 at this point. I have who I really think will win the championship, and they won in 5. So to do this, and your GM, this has to have an effect on the locker room, not just this week, but also beyond that, right?
Well, it's hard to say because we don't know everything that went on behind the scenes. I mean, they asked Jokic about it, and he said that he was told before it was announced. So, I mean, that to me shows that if he wanted to fight for Malone, you're telling me that ownership would have gone against his wishes. So maybe he wasn't that thrilled with what was going on. I mean, again, I saw a report, I think it was from Sam Amick in The Athletic, that was saying that he was frustrated with that Jokic was frustrated with how the team was playing defensively, ranked 20th in defense. Not that he's like the defensive player of the year, but I mean, still, I
say that too. Also,
yeah. So I think there's frustration on his point, whether or not it's valid or not, with how they were playing defensively, and so maybe he was on board with it. So it's hard for me to say that if Jokic hypothetically said to ownership, "I've had it with this guy," they're going to have him gone before lunch. So, I mean, like, I feel like if Jokic wasn't on board with it, maybe they don't make that move, or they don't make it right before the playoffs, 3-4 games before the playoffs. So from what I heard from his post-game quotes, when I was watching the video, like, that didn't look like a guy who, even though he said all the right things, was devastated that Malone was gone. And so that's why I don't know that I can speak to it and say, oh, this is terrible timing, because if Jokic wasn't thrilled with something that was going on, management's going to side with the player. And considering he's the best player in the world, that's not the first time that a team in any sport is going to side with a player over a coach.
Right. I mean, obviously a story to look at as we get to the playoffs next week and what effect it has. I think if we believe that this, I already was not big on the Western Conference in terms of like the amount of teams getting to the finals. To me, was like I think I told you last time we recorded, like, if I built actual finals contenders in the Western Conference as of last week, I said 2. It was Denver and it was OKC. Like, now, if this unrest is going to trickle over into the playoffs, that opens the door for another team. And could it be the Lakers? Could it be someone else? I don't know. We'll get to that in the draft, obviously, because I have a couple of things there. I think I might actually pluck out of that segment. All right. They also announced last week. Now, we know last week we reacted to Carmelo Anthony's announcement last week on the show. They announced, I believe, it's the rest of the card, headlined also by Dwight Howard into the Hall of Fame, first ballot as well too. Kind of glad I don't see a lot of pushback on this. I mean, at least I haven't seen it on social media, because for years people have always questioned, he's a Hall of Famer, he's a first ballot guy, and to me, I've always thought it was a no-brainer. Because any guy that wins 3 Defensive Player of the Years, you have to give that credence. And the guy took an Orlando team to the finals in 2009, beat LeBron in the process of doing that. He was a very, very good player at one point for a good 4 or 5 year stretch, top 3 player in the league. So I'm really glad he's getting his flowers here, even with the late career, like, issues and personal meltdowns here and there. He still was a great player, one of the better centers in league history. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, he did make the all NBA 75 team, right? If I'm not mistaken, he did make that, right?
I believe he did. I mean, look, he was a
dominant, and rightly so.
Yeah, he was the dominant center for a decade in the league. I mean, obviously, the period you're referring to at the end of his career was when he was on basically the entire Southeastern Division. I mean, he was on
Atlanta, Charlotte, right?
Atlanta, Charlotte, Washington. I mean, he really made the rounds between a lot of different teams during that time period. Ironically, I want to say it was 2018 or 2019. I mean, when he was with Charlotte, he had a 30-30 game against the Nets. So, I mean,
and the numbers there, even though in those years, the numbers were actually decent.
Yeah. So, I mean, even when he was seen as past his prime and not being that great a player anymore, he still had a game of 30 and 30. So, I mean, he was still capable of playing. But I mean, in his prime, when he was with Orlando, dominant defensive player, scored a ton of points, he wasn't a shooter, obviously, but I mean, given how well he defended and how dominant he was around the rim, again, he was the best player at that position for his generation, I guess you could say, or one of the best. So I don't have any problem with that, and I'm glad to see that he got recognized for it.
Yeah, I'm really glad he was recognized for that, because like I said, even with all of his issues he's had, I've always been a Dwight guy. I thought the guy is, look, he's not Shaq and Wilt and these guys, but second tier, maybe third tier centers all time, which in a league that's had so many legendary guys. I'm not mad about that whatsoever. So yeah, shout out to him. We also have some WNBA players, Sue Bird, Maya Moore, for example, getting in. You got Mickey Arison from the Heat, the owner of Miami Heat. For me, it's a big deal. He got in as well too. I love that. Danny Crawford, former referee, get in as well. Nice class this year. I like this class.
Yeah, absolutely. WNBA, Sue Bird, obviously, speaking of one of the best players of their generation. I mean, that definitely I would lean towards you for the Mickey Arison commentary, though. Obviously,
I've been a Heat fan since before he took over the team. He took over the same year Pat Riley got traded here, when they call that. The same day they acquired him in that controversial thing with the Knicks. But I've been a Heat fan 6 years prior to that. But to me, that people forget the history of the team before Mickey Arison. There was nothing really there. It was mediocre at best. Mostly bad years, a couple playoff appearances there and there, but nothing really to sneeze on. We had one winning season prior to him getting here. And then, to me, the Miami Heat became a serious franchise when Mickey Arison took over, because immediately within the first few months, he's getting Pat Riley. Then he's getting Alonzo Mourning. And as you know, the team changes. And before you know it, 2 years later, they're in the conference finals against the Chicago Bulls. I mean, I never would have even thought that, being a Heat fan since 1989, that there's no way how this Heat team would be on the level of the Bulls and the Knicks. And here we are. And it has not let up since then. And 3 titles later, and, LeBron James era and all this stuff. I mean, to see where this team has gone, Mickey Arison gets a lot of credit, because this was I'm born in New York, obviously, but I've lived in South Florida since 1989, since I was 9 years old. This is a football town and has been a football town for many years, but that changed pretty much after Mickey Arison took over. And up until probably the last couple seasons, the Heat has been the number one team in this market, over the Dolphins, over the Miami Hurricanes in college football, because they've stunk the last 20 years, over the Panthers till recently, because now they're winning cups now. Who else is market? The Marlins obviously stink, that 2 World Series, but around that they've stunk. So they have been the consistent franchise over the course of the last 30 plus years. And you look at a bad year for the Heat is like this year. It's not a terrible year for the Heat. I mean, obviously the circumstances aside with Jimmy Butler and whatnot, but the Heat never really melt down. Even when they have a bad year or miss the playoffs, it's around 500. It's not one of those 20-win seasons, unless it's the Dwayne Wade year when he got hurt. That's different. But they're always in the conversation to play a playoff team, and then most years are in the conversation of winning titles. So that's a tribute to the relevancy of what Mickey the culture he's brought to this city, and I'm grateful for that, obviously.
Yeah, and I think NBA fans look at the Heat as one of the model franchises in the league. So given that they've got that reputation, since he's presided over multiple iterations of successful Miami Heat teams, he and Riley have really been the constants. So again, someone who deserves their due, I think, for everything you laid out and the fact that they've got such a good reputation across the league for establishing culture, and even as the players change, the organization pretty much stays a constant. So he's got to earn a lot of credit for that.
Yeah, if you told me in 13 years old in 1993 that the Miami Heat would be a model franchise in the league, I was like, get the hell out of here. No way. All right, before we get to the our storyline draft, let's look at the current NBA playoff picture with 3 days to go before the season's over. Let's go to the East first, actually. Can you see that there? Yes, you could see that. All right. So here we go. That's the West. I'm sorry about that. Wrong one. I apologize. I meant to put the East up.
The East is a lot easier because that's pretty locked in at this point.
Well, the East and why is not showing the East here?
I got it.
There it is. Okay, I got it. There we go. So yeah, it looks pretty cut and dry at this point in the East. You got 1 through 6 right now. Cavs at 1, Celtics at 2. Cavs clinched number 1 seed, I think, last night. The Knicks at 3, 29. They pretty much locked in that 3 spot. The Pacers at 4, Bucks at 5, Pistons at 6. You got the play-in situation here. All 4 play-in teams all set. Magic, Hawks, Bulls, and Heat at 7 through 10. Of course, the 5 teams are going to miss the playoffs: Raptors, Nets, Sixers, Hornets, and Wizards. Any predictions here? Does this list lock in as is? If so, what changes in your opinion?
The only thing I guess that could really change would be 8 and 9. I think Orlando's locked into 7.
Yeah, they are. That's last night.
Given the few games that are left, you look at 37-42, 37-43 for those 2 teams. I think that's really the only thing that can change. I would imagine that 1 through 6 is going to stay like that. Milwaukee plays New Orleans, then at Detroit twice. I think if Detroit loses tonight to the Knicks, which is a game that the Knicks are probably going to want to win, because they still haven't officially locked up the 3 seed. If the Knicks win that game, I think Milwaukee locks in at 5. So, by tomorrow morning, we could pretty much have the entire Eastern Conference all set, which will not be the case for the Western Conference. It'll probably be Sunday afternoon, and we're still trying to figure out who's going to finish where. But, this is pretty locked in. And I'd imagine that
you think the 10 here in order stays as is by Sunday night. This will be the 10 teams, the 10 teams in this order.
Yeah, and I would say in that order too. Just looking at the teams that those Atlanta will play the Nets tonight, resting players. They're probably going to stay in that spot. The top 6 I definitely see staying at that spot. But based on the projections, based on the schedule, Atlanta plays Orlando, Philly, and Brooklyn. You'd imagine they get 2 more wins. That locks up that spot there. So even though it's not officially locked up at 8, I'd be surprised if it didn't finish that way. Not that anyone's necessarily caring about the play-in teams, but I think 1 through 6 is going to look like that come Sunday afternoon.
All right, let's look at the Western Conference here now. Western Conference here, and this is where the fun begins now. So right now, for all the listeners who are listening on the audio side here, of course, on the podcast, we have it on the video side. We have the standings shown right now through this morning. So obviously, number 1, OKC with a bullet. This is incredible. They're 14, 15 games ahead of the next team in the West. Number 2, Houston Rockets. What's impressive with the Rockets, though, what they're doing is nobody's talking about them. Nobody's talking about them. It's incredible. 3, the Lakers. 4, the Nuggets. 5, the Clippers at 5 now. Another quiet team. The 6, right now, the Grizzlies. Then you got the play-in team 7 through 10, Warriors, Timberwolves, Kings, and Mavericks. And then, of course, the 5 teams out of the playoffs: Suns, Blazers, Spurs, Pelicans, and Jazz. Of course, those teams are officially out. Suns, as of last night, are out as well too. Before we get to the playoff teams, Phoenix Suns. They were never a title contender for me, even when before the season started. But if you told me they would miss the play-in October, I would say get the hell out of here. And then even like a couple weeks ago, and Greg, even a couple weeks ago, we did a segment. The Suns were starting to play better, remember? And they were like in the playing spot, but they were like 2 back of maybe the 7th seed. I was saying, well, if they win 2 playing games, maybe they can give a scare to OKC. And all of a sudden they lose 5 in a row. Durant gets hurt and they melt down again. I mean, put a bow on the Suns season, please, for me.
I think when we had that discussion, that's when you got introduced to the Tankathon remaining strength of schedule
yes.
website that I kept referencing.
That is correct.
I'm like, yeah, they're playing better, but their schedule is still the toughest in the league. So, I mean, I don't know if they're going to be able to continue that given the schedule they had coming up. And I guess, unfortunately for them, they couldn't. And then once Durant sprained his ankle, it was pretty much over. But yeah, they're gonna have a tough time rebuilding that thing because, and we've talked about it, like the obvious trade for them is KD, but given that he's going to the last year of his deal, how much can you realistically expect to get for a guy who's going to be 37 years old and entering the last year of his deal? You're probably not getting what you would hope to restock the cupboard. Like, I mean, if you were trading him to Miami, let's say, like, could you even hope to get Andrew Wiggins at that point? Like, I mean, knowing that KD is going to be expiring, like, I just don't know what trading him will do to basically turn around their fortunes. And then they're still stuck with Bradley Beal's situation. I heard rumors about him being the most expensive buyout candidate in NBA history, basically just eating his money to get rid of him.
Because the no trade clause.
Yeah, because they can't trade him. They can't get anything for him. And I mean, they really have no assets left to trade anyway. So, I mean, the only way that they could really reset their franchise would be to trade Booker. And Booker really hasn't shown any willingness to want to leave. And also, like, the owner is like steadfast in his demand to compete. So I don't see him like resetting. So I don't really know where they go from where they are, given that they have such little flexibility. And the only real way they could gain flexibility would be by trading Booker. And I don't see Matt Ishbia wanting to do that. I don't even see there being an appetite on Booker's end to do that. So it's they're kind of in a crossroads. And I mean, you know, they're probably going to bring back a very similar roster next year because
minus Durant probably.
Yeah, minus Durant because I don't know that you're going to get a lot for him. And I also don't know that you can get rid of Beal aside from telling him to go away. So I was wrong about them. I mean, I didn't think that they'd necessarily be a 2 or a 3 seed, but I thought they'd be in like the 5 to 8 range. Let's say.
Right. It's going to be number 11, and Portland might pass them. Well said and done. Come on now.
Yeah, and it's important to note that Houston has their lottery pick this year. So I mean,
really?
Yeah. So I mean,
wow.
Yeah. So that pick went to the Nets in the James Harden trade. And then last summer, when the Nets traded Bridges, they made the trade with Houston to reacquire 2 of their picks to then get Phoenix's draft going forward. So basically, they got 3. So Houston got 3 Phoenix picks plus a Mavericks pick that came over in the Kyrie trade. And so you look at it and it's like, oh, that's also a good pick because a 2029 first from Dallas, given the age of Klay Thompson, Anthony Davis, and so on, that looks like a good pick too. So Houston's really set up for the future. And I think the reason why people overlook them is because they're looking more at their future than they are at the current state. I mean, look, they had a great regular season, but it's almost like the Oklahoma City Thunder of last year. Like, are they too inexperienced to really make some noise? Like, I'm sure that if they wind up playing Minnesota or Golden State in the first round, people are probably going to take one of those 2 teams in that series.
All right. So right now, as of this morning, the Lakers clinched last night in Dallas. So right now, 4 through 8 right now in the West, separated by, I think, 2 games, maybe a game and a half. If I'm reading this correctly. No, it's 2 games. I think it's maybe a game and a half again. Maybe we have 2 games. Maybe. Nuggets, Clippers, Grizzlies, the Warriors, and the Wolves all battling to avoid the play-in. Look, I'm going to ask you more about prediction-wise. How do you see the rest of this order of changing? Obviously, Dallas is pretty much locked into the 10. Looks like it, barring a swap between them and Sacramento, but I don't see that happening. But 4 through 8, how would it look in your opinion, your prediction, by Sunday evening?
Well, two things here. One, I was looking up tiebreakers because I could see multiple teams having the same record. So the first tiebreaker is division leader and wins. Granted, all the top 3 seeds are all the division leaders, so that doesn't come into play. And so the next tiebreaker would be better winning percentage among the tied teams. So if you have 3 teams that are tied, which could very likely happen, it's going to be how those teams all played against each other.
Right.
So that's one thing. Number 2, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that 14 hours ago, it looked like Golden State could have wound up being like a 4 seed. They lose to San Antonio on a buzzer beater last night. And again,
Harrison Barnes and his own stopping grounds too.
Yeah, Harrison Barnes hits a 3, and now Golden State goes from basically a lock to be in the playoffs to now fighting for 7-8 seeding. It's just that sensitive. You know, you have one bad quarter, one bad game, and all of a sudden you go from making plans for a playoff series to now you've got to fight just to even get in the playoffs. So I mean, it can change that quickly. My guess would be that Denver and the Clippers wind up at 4-5 in some order. I mean, the projections show Denver at 5, LA at 4. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Denver won out.
It's based on the schedule?
Well, I mean, Denver plays Houston and Memphis. I would imagine Denver will beat Memphis, and I don't think that Houston's really going to have anything to play for, so I don't know why Houston would be playing their guys in that game, because I wouldn't want to get somebody hurt right before a 2-7 playoff series. So, I mean, I feel like Denver is probably going to win their last 2 games, and then having won last night, I could see a situation where they lock themselves into 4. And then I don't know that I have a lot of faith in Memphis. I mean, I looking at the schedules, Minnesota, I imagine so the biggest game of the season arguably will be tonight. That'll be Memphis playing Minnesota. Whoever wins that game is in good shape really for staying out of the play-in. If Memphis loses that game, I'd imagine they'll be in the play-in. Minnesota's got 2 cupcake games after this one. So if Minnesota wins tonight, they have the Nets tomorrow. Then they have the Jazz on the last game of the season. Both those teams have nothing to play for. So if Minnesota wins tonight, they're going to win out. And then that would bump, I would say, Memphis into the play-in. And then we'll see how it shakes out from there. But like, I mean, I wouldn't have expected that Golden State would have lost last night to San Antonio. So I guess you can't take anything for granted. But Memphis also has to play Golden State too. So
So like if I'm prognosticating here, Memphis is cooked.
Yeah, I mean, look, they still have to play the games. So I mean, I'm not gonna completely rule them out. But I mean, oh wait, no, excuse me, they don't play Golden State. They play Denver. So they play Denver and Minnesota. Those are 2 games that they could very easily lose. Then they play Dallas. But I mean, Denver and Minnesota, like those games are games that they have everything to play for. Whereas Denver playing Houston with nothing to play for, you look at those games differently. So I would say that Memphis probably winds up on the outside looking in to where they're in one of those play-in spots.
Schedule kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, my guess is that Golden State probably still winds up in the play-in with Memphis, and maybe Minnesota slides in to 6.
Yeah, that's my prediction. I think if I had to predict it, I would go obviously 3 teams on top of the 3 teams, but I would go Denver 4. I go Clippers at 5. They're playing very well late here, also, by the way, too.
Yeah.
Very dangerous team now, and Kawhi's healthy for the record. I would go Minnesota 6, actually. Because if they win this game tonight, which I think they will, the rest of the way, you mentioned, they play the Jazz and the Nets, I think. So, yeah. I'll go Timberwolves at 6. I'll go Warriors 7 and Memphis 8.
Yeah, and that's what I have, too. But, I mean, again, I would have imagined that Golden State would have beaten San Antonio. So you just never know with all these teams playing each other. Like Memphis could win tonight and then lose out.
We know what it is though. It's the Harrison Barnes revenge game.
That's
I mean,
right.
9 years later after the Durant acquisition, but still better late than never.
Yeah. No, he really did them in last night. So that was a huge result and possibly a season changing result for Golden State.
Yeah, absolutely. So it should be a very fun, like tonight's game. Obviously, I'm going to watch that tonight. That's the TNT game, right?
I believe so. I can check that really quick. Yes. Yeah. So
I'll be watching it.
They've got Cleveland and Indiana as the early game, then Minnesota and Memphis as the late game.
I'll have White Lotus on one TV and I'll have that game on the other, so it's perfect.
You haven't finished White Lotus yet?
So I am on season 2.
Okay.
Last 2 episodes. I'm on last 2 episodes, and then we're gonna binge season 3 this weekend. I told my wife a couple days ago, listen, and I said this on the podcast last night too, also on the solo pod did last night. I told my wife, listen, we got a week because once next Saturday comes, like even with the play-in, I can still, it's not as like whatever. Next Saturday when the playoffs start, you get seen for the next 2 months because playoffs. I'm locked in. I am locked in. So let's try to get this thing finished before next weekend, so we can at least say we got this show done. Because I don't want to have this thing hanging on another month or so. So
yeah, White Lotus is one of my favorite shows. So I think season 2 was my favorite, but I thought season 1 and 2 were both great. I don't want to spoil anything for season 3. So
okay, so I real quick, do you prefer season 1 or season 2 of the two?
I think I prefer season 2. They're both good. I'm not knocking either one of them. I could be swayed either way, but I think I like season 2 a little better.
So I would have said season 1 was better, but the characters in season 2 are actually pretty darn good. I gotta admit.
Yeah, I love, and again, it's been a couple years since I've seen it, but like the family dynamic with like Michael Imperioli and his dad and the son and everything going on there. I like the character. I feel like I like the characters the most, maybe in that season.
Yeah,
but again, I
think I do too. Yeah,
I'm not counting season 3 in anything that I'm discussing because I don't want to.
Exactly. I tell you when I get done, we'll discuss it on the show and do a little small review. By the way, when season 2 started and my wife saw Michael Imperioli, she's like, "Oh, it's Christopher! It's Christopher!" Yeah. So Sopranos.
or Spider, it's me. So
yeah. All right, buddy. Let's do the draft officially. So we're gonna pick. Each one's gonna pick 5 storylines and draft it. Once you pick it, I can pick it. That are intriguing to you entering this NBA postseason that starts next week. So, Greg, since you're the guest, and I'm very kind, I'll let you pick first.
Okay, so this probably won't be a surprise. My biggest storyline will be how the Knicks play and what that means for Tibbs in the aftermath of the season. And part of this cycles back to what we spent a lot of the podcast talking about with Michael Malone being fired, because it's like, is he a guy who would be a logical replacement, like a New York City guy going to the Knicks if things flame out with the Knicks in the playoffs? I mean, everybody will say that, the Knicks are going to have their hands full with the Pistons. I think the Pistons are still ahead of schedule. So I'm not necessarily as concerned about that series, even though it could be like a 6-game series. Like, I think that the Knicks will be fine in that series if that's how it shakes out. My concern would be how they look when they play Boston. I mean, if they lose a series 4-0, 4-1, I feel like you'd have a hard time bringing him back, given that the expectations for this team with what they traded for Bridges should have been like, these are all in moves we're making for Towns, for Bridges. If we're not a championship contender, and let's face it, if you lose the series 4-1, if you lose a gentleman's sweep to the Celtics, I wouldn't say that's being anywhere near championship contending.
I agree.
And then what does that mean for the coach? And I mean, people, especially in the New York area, especially people that grew up when Van Gundy was the head coach and Tibbs was the loyal assistant, and all these media members in their 50s and 60s love Tibbs. Like, great guy, great coach, but have they reached the ceiling with him as the coach? And look, you don't trade 5 picks for Mikal Bridges, then have him be an ancillary piece, which is kind of what he's been when Brunson's been in the lineup. I mean, he had his moments when Brunson was hurt, but I feel like they need a coach who can unlock more of what they have on the roster. It can't just be the Brunson Towns 2-man game and then everything else is ISO. And like, we're going to learn a lot in the playoffs because the game's going to slow down, and it can't just be what it was the other night. I mean, even though the game didn't mean anything to the Knicks or the Celtics, the way they played the last 15 seconds of regulation, plus how they played overtime, did inspire a lot of confidence on my end in terms of ingenuity for running the offense. Once they got to overtime, it was a lot of Brunson with 4 guys standing around. And it's like, if that's why they go home, I feel like there's going to have to be a fall guy for that. and it's probably going to be Tibbs running to the end of the line here. And given the fact that there's a lot of good coaches that are now available, Jenkins, Malone, they'll have their pick if they chose to go in that direction. So I find what happens with the Knicks to be very interesting from a coaching standpoint. And also, if they flame out, do they then try to tweak the dynamic of their roster? Like, again, Durant's going to be available. Is he a guy that they go after? How do they do that? What guys are discussed? So I feel like there's a lot that could change with the Knicks in 2 weeks. When we have this discussion in 2.5, 3 weeks, it might be totally different than what it is now. So I feel like that's a storyline.
I'm of the opinion that anything less than a conference finals appearance, along with a respectable, at worst, defeat. So let's say they play Boston in the conference finals and they lose the series, but it's respectable. They lose in 6 games. Anything less than that, I think he's on a hot seat.
Well, they're going to run.
Fired.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to run into Boston in the second round based on the way the standings are.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's true. So,
yeah, I wouldn't even need them to get to the conference finals, but like you need like a 6 or a 7 game series against Boston. Even if you wind up losing, you can't go out in 4 or 5 games and then him come back as the coach. That's basically
his floor is 6. His floor is 6 games against Celtics in the second round of playoffs. If he loses to Detroit in the first round of playoffs, he's done. Yeah. He's not in the hot seat. He's done because I think you mentioned it. I'm glad you mentioned it. The Mike Malone availability now. The other Taylor Jenkins availability now, other coaches out there who are available. Thibodeau. And the criticism of him for years has always been there, but it got louder this season, especially with the minutes that he got with the roster he has now currently. He could have gotten away with that 2-3 years ago with a less than roster. This roster now is a championship roster, in my opinion. Okay, and if your coaching style and you have your formula and you got here. But it only gets so far. I think he's cooked. If they're out less than 6 games in the second round of playoffs against Boston, he's cooked this year.
Yeah, and if they lose in the first round, I think you're then looking at like really drastic changes, not only for him but also for the roster in terms of like everything is on the table in terms.
And that's what Kevin Durant. And then Kevin Durant becomes a realistic
obviously not Brunson. Like Brunson is the only guy that I would say is like locked into a future there.
I would say that.
I'm talking about if they were to lose in the first round. I think if they get blown out in the second round, you might still be looking at wholesale changes, not counting Brunson, but you'd at the very least be looking at changing the coach. If they have a competitive series where it goes 6-7 games, maybe you're not looking at much change at that point. But I mean, it's hard to say. We just have to watch and see how it plays out. But I think given the nature of the different directions it could go, that's why I went with this one for my first.
Right. All right, my first pick on this one is we touched on it earlier on the podcast. The Nuggets, it's unrest, and if it can derail what. Look, to me, if they anything less than a conference finals appearance for them, spells trouble. Because then you look at those contracts. You look at the Michael Porter Jr. contract. You look at the Jamal Murray contract a little bit. You could be discussed on the podcast too that Jamal Murray is a really good player, overpaid for the production he brings to the team. Okay, and then you add this situation with the firing of Malone. Does this open door for Nikola Jokic getting a little bit, bothered and we see what happens that teams are very okay with pulling the trigger on stars. Look, we just saw what Luka Doncic like literally went to the NBA Finals to this guy and they traded him literally in the middle of the season. Okay, so I think this Nuggets unrest is a possible powder keg for a sign of things to come. Because they may not just be Mike Malone. Because if the performance in playoffs don't translate into, at the very least, losing to OKC in the Western Conference Finals, then we are definitely spending this summer, Greg, you and I doing podcasts, speculating on the future of Nikola Jokic in Denver. Not saying he's going to get traded, not saying he wants to get traded, but you have to figure that something's amiss.
Yeah, I don't think I'd be there just yet, given that they were up 20 last year in the second round of the playoffs in game 7 against the Timberwolves. They blow that, and obviously the Timberwolves go on to play Dallas. Dallas moves on to the finals. But like Denver was right there for going to the conference finals again. And I mean, they could very easily be in the conference finals again this year. So, I mean, I don't know that the track record is there. It's not like it's been years of turmoil. It's a championship. It's a near second round appearance. I just
But
feel like
the
it's
difference, but there was still a feel good. There was still that, we just won a championship last year. Now we're a little more removed from that now. Now we're 2 years removed from that. So now what's the excuse now? Because now we're falling backwards now a little bit. And we fired our coach too on top of that. And we got some really weird contracts that we might have to start like looking at. It's like, Michael Porter Jr. is he real for that kind of money? Jamal Murray can't stay healthy.
I think it's going to be a situation like in Milwaukee with Giannis. Like they're going to exhaust all avenues to try and put the best team around Jokic as possible, even if it means moving whoever they have to, be it any of those guys. I think, again, like I was saying with Brunson being the only safe guy there, I mean, I think that they would look to move every single guy on their roster to placate Jokic before they got to a point where they would entertain doing that. And again, it's not like it's Durant where he's in the last year of his deal where it's like they really have no choice. Right. When you're talking about Giannis, when you're talking about Jokic, like they have years and big money left on their deal. Like the organization is not obligated to move them. So I don't think that after a bad couple weeks that they would entertain doing that. Even if he wanted out, I still don't think they would move him. So just in my opinion, I think we're still a little ways away from that. Not saying we don't get there. We could very easily get there at some point. I just think that we haven't gotten to that point yet. Even though when they fire the coach, that's what everybody immediately thought. Like, where will Jokic go next? So that is what the fans will think.
If anything, the ancillary pieces might be the one that could be on the move first. If anything, the Jamal Murray's or the like I said, the Michael Porter Jr. So anyway, all right, number 3, third pick.
Yeah, so I'm going to piggyback on that and say what happens with Milwaukee and Giannis. So I mean,
that's a good one.
So I mean, and again, that could wind up being them looking at moving everything they've got to move to try and rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic to try and bring in another player. Are they using the lone pick that they have left to move along with Kyle Kuzma to bring in another player to try and reset? I mean, the one thing I will say in this situation is that I feel like it would be unfair to the organization that you're going to demand a trade, given that if Dame doesn't get blood clots, you're probably in a different situation. So, I mean, it's like, I wouldn't want to hold Dame responsible for that situation for why you would demand a trade, because that's the way that it would come off looking. And look, they still haven't ruled Dame out for the playoffs. So, I mean, if you want to pack this into that, does Dame try and make this miraculous playoff comeback for them? And then also, if he does, how can you then, as Giannis, demand a trade after this guy risked his life to come back and play next to you? So, I mean,
that's very true.
Yeah, so I feel like there's a lot of moving parts. I'm not sure if Dame's going to come back. I mean, I said from the beginning, how could you possibly bring him back 2 to 3 months before what everybody else comes back, given the risks associated with, I mean, again, I was fumbling for the word. Like, it's not an injury. It's like a health situation. It's not like he pulled his calf or has a calf strain. And it's like, oh, had he been younger, had he been in better shape, maybe this wouldn't have happened. Like, this is just like a fluke thing. I mean, again, it happened to Bosch. I mean, it happened to Asar Thompson, who's 19 years old when it happens to him last year with the Pistons. So it's just like a fluke thing that could still have ramifications on the franchise going forward, even if that's totally unfair to the franchise, because it's not like they've put together like this crummy team. It's just like, do they have bad luck right around the playoffs again? And how can you control that sort of thing? So I'm interested to see just how they play in the playoffs, who plays in the playoffs, and then if they don't play well, kind of like with New York, what does that mean going forward? And maybe for ownership, it's like, look, you still have multiple years left on your deal. We'll try and move everybody else, but we're not moving you. And he might be okay with that. Again, we just have to see how it plays out. But how it looks, same thing with the Knicks, is going to have, I would say, a big say in how things go. I mean, look, if they wind up making a run and get to the conference finals and lose to Boston, then we're probably not having this discussion. But if they get bounced by Indiana in the first round, which could conceivably happen, then it might be a different discussion.
Well, they have won 5 in a row, so they're playing the best basketball at the right time right now, despite not having a game.
Yeah, they are playing well right now. And I should note before you move on to your second one, I mean, they were losing by 20 after 3 quarters to the Timberwolves the other night. And they ran off a 40-13 fourth quarter and beat Minnesota. And a game Minnesota absolutely had to have. Not saying
Of
that
course. Yeah.
Not saying Milwaukee didn't need the game, but I mean, like, Milwaukee is still locked into a playoff seed. Minnesota's got everything to play for, and they threw up a clunker in the fourth quarter. So that was an impressive showing by Milwaukee. Not that anybody's going to be swayed by what happens in early April before the playoffs, but still just an interesting thing to note that Milwaukee is playing a lot better lately.
Right. My pick, second pick here, fourth pick, is another team right now who is the hottest team right now in the league. The Clippers. Are they dangerous? And I say that because when you bake in the Denver unrest, and you already know how I feel about the Western Conference, that there's really not really many real title contenders, not playoff teams, but title contenders who actually play in the finals. But the Clippers are healthy at the right time. Kawhi is back now. I mean, so if there was any time for Kawhi Leonard renaissance, you just need 2 months of healthy Kawhi, and if any time you can pull this off, because the West right now is, excluding OKC, of course, and you still have the age to deal with that there, of course. It's pretty wide open. It's pretty wide open, and who's to say the Clippers couldn't? Because right now they can get they can win the 4th seed in the West. They're right now tied with Denver right now, currently for the 4. They would draw Denver, and Denver, that unrest over Denver. Who's to say they couldn't beat Denver in the first round and have them reeling into the offseason? Then of course you'll draw the OKC in the second round of playoffs. Tough matchup, obviously, but again, you're gonna get Kawhi healthiest he's been probably since he's been there, honestly. James Harden, not for nothing. James Harden, for all the talk we get, all the negativity we get about James Harden, he is still one of the most reliable players in the league. So, and he's having another great year. I mean, I already have him as possibly being my all NBA team this year when we do awards next week. Because he's been consistent. He's really carried that team this year because no Paul George, obviously he's gone. He got traded he was gone in Philadelphia. Kawhi's missed most of the year. So James Harden's been the bell cow all year long, and they've stayed the course, and they may win 50 games this year because of James Harden. So the Clippers could be very dangerous, man. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I think they're 100% live to be a contender in the West. I mean, you were talking about the list being like 2 teams. Right when you said that, I'm like, I would actually put the Clippers even above the Lakers in that, just given that it's not just Harden's playing great, Kawhi's healthy, Norman Powell's having a career year. Obviously, he's been injured a bit, but I mean, if he's healthy going into the playoffs, and also Ivica Zubac has had a career year, an eye-opening season. I mean, he's averaging 17 and 13, 5th in the league in field goal percentage. So, I mean, he's pretty reliable around the rim, a good pick and roll partner for Harden and whatnot. So, I mean, they've got 4 really good players. They've got a good bench and arguably one of the league's best coaches in Tyronn Lue. So, I mean, it's just the nature of the West that you could make an argument for any team. I mean, I wouldn't make an argument for Memphis or even Houston for getting out of the conference. But I mean, I feel like you could make an argument for the Clippers, and I could sell you on how they could wind up, winning the West. I could make that argument, not saying they will, but I think that they're definitely live to do that. So I don't think that that's a hot take by any stretch.
And in layman's terms, they are probably my fuck shit up team in the West right now. Going to the playoffs. All right, round 3, pick number 5 for you.
Yeah, so given the regular season that they had, I'm going to say the performance of Cleveland's guards, Mitchell and Garland, given that this is a team that winning over 60 games is basically run away with the East, even from Boston. How is that going to translate in the playoffs? Is this just a good regular season show, or can you have success with 2 smaller guards in the playoffs? I would say in previous years, it's okay, they're an inexperienced team. They're a young team. They've never been there before. Garland hasn't been there. Mobley hasn't been there. Allen had a cup of coffee there with the Nets when they lost to Philly. So it's these guys really aren't experienced. I feel now that excuse is gone, and it's what kind of performance are you going to get out of Garland and Mitchell in the playoffs? And especially when they run into a team like Boston, assuming they get there. I mean, I don't want to discount the winner of Milwaukee or Indiana, but I mean, let's say they get to Boston. Like, how do those guards handle having Jaylen Brown switched out onto them, having to go against Derek White, having to go against Drew Holiday? I think that they've been given a lot of kudos for being a possible finals contender, which they should. They've got one of the best records in the league, but it's like, is that the product of a regular season? And we've talked about it a lot during the course of this season. Is it just the product of a regular season and that won't hold up in the playoffs? I'm just interested to see how those guys hold up in a playoff setting.
Yeah, it's Boston. It's Boston or bust at this point.
Yeah.
With this team in the East. I'm not saying they should win NBA Finals, but you win 64 games, 63 games this year so far. With a couple days ago, you got to show me something. I'm not fully. Look, I'm still skeptical about this team, as good as they are. I'm still skeptical in ways that I still see a scenario where New York could beat them in the 7-game series. I'm still skeptical in ways I can see Milwaukee, if they're playing like this right now, going to playoffs, and by some miracle Dame comes back in the playoffs, I'm not ruling that out that Milwaukee could beat them in the 7-game series. I have to see it. I'm not saying Cavs fans. I'm not shitting on you guys. I just got to see it because I got let down 2 years ago when you guys did this whole same thing 2 years ago. Not obviously not 65 wins good or whatever, but you guys were the hot shots of the East that in 2 years ago, and the Knicks came and embarrassed y'all in 5 games. So you got to gain that trust back. You got to show me. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to shit on you guys. I'm rooting you guys do well. I hope you guys do win the East actually this year, to be honest with you. But you got to show me.
And both of those guys were all-stars. So, I mean, it's like they've gotten a lot of notoriety for how well they've played. I want to see if that holds up in a playoff scenario, because when they played Orlando last year, it was a struggle. I mean, they struggled to get past Orlando. And what does Orlando have? A lot of size and length. Like, Orlando can't score, but they have guys who are, have big wingspans who can give smaller guards a lot of trouble. So I'm curious to see if that's going to be a trend for the foreseeable future, or if that was just a one-off for, look, they haven't been in this situation before. And as they get more experience, better coach, however you want to look at it, will that change in the future? We'll find out. And so I'm curious to see how that plays out. And that's why I went with them, given their record and given their status as all-stars.
Right. All right. My third pick here in this draft, a 6th pick overall, is have the Oklahoma City Thunder grown up. Like, obviously, they've superseded everything we thought they'd do this year. I had the over them winning 60 games. They won 60. I mean, what, 65 right now? 64 currently. And they've been from start to finish, even without having Chet one half the year, they've shown that they're the best team in the league by far. SGA is likely to be the MVP this year. But again, with things like this comes expectations. Now, last year, with losing in the second round to Dallas, not a surprise. Okay, even though they had a great year, not a surprise because you're young, and we know the story goes to the NBA. There's always a process to this now. But now, as we continue this process, now you got second round playoffs last year against Dallas, lost in 6 games. So now the goal should be, obviously conference finals should be the goal, but I think honestly that anything less than NBA Finals berth at this point now, given what we've seen this year with this team, barring any injuries, should be a very good expectation. Notice I didn't say championship. I just said just get to the finals, and this is a successful season. And obviously the problems they had last year in the playoffs, they corrected with the size issues with Hartenstein, of course, and whatnot. They have a great, deepest roster in basketball, in my opinion. So there's no excuse that this team, given everything in the Western Conference, the Denver unrest, and no one in the conference really is scary anyway, that this team should not, at the very least, be in NBA Finals this year. So,
yeah, they were on my list too for exactly the same reason. I mean, look, if they lose in the Western Conference Finals in a 7-game series, I don't think people are going to freak out. But I mean,
it depends on who.
Yeah, it certainly depends. But I mean, to your point, they have been the dominant team, even when comparing to Cleveland, Boston. Like, they've been the best team in the league this year. So, I mean, my concern really would be, like, do they run into trouble not in the first round, obviously, but like in the second round? I mean, or even the first round. Let's say they wind up playing, well, I guess they'd wind up playing like the winner of Sacramento and Dallas. So, I mean, I guess they wouldn't run into problems in the first round. But like, let's say they wind up playing
Denver or
the Nuggets in the second round, let's say. So like, let's say the chalk holds up and, you know, they clean Sacramento's clock in the first round and then wind up playing Denver. Like, what if they can't handle Jokic and they wind up losing that series? I feel like they're built to handle any comer because they can play a wing heavy lineup. They can play a big heavy lineup. Like, I feel like their versatility gives them an advantage in any matchup that they might have. But let's just say Jokic plays out of his mind and they lose that series and Denver goes to the conference finals. Like, that to me would be a disaster for them, even though Denver is a great team.
I would have no see now, yes.
Yeah.
I would have thought that maybe 2 weeks ago because of the unrest, parts of the unrest.
Yeah.
But with the unrest, that still happens, that'd be a problem.
Yeah.
That'd be a massive problem for me. So
to
me, that's why it's to me, all these things right now in the Western Conference and what we've seen this year with this team, it should be relatively a cakewalk to the finals. I know Laker fans got excited last Sunday after they beat them by 20-something points in OKC on Sunday. Stop. You're not beating this team in a 7-game series. Okay. Stop.
And also the one important thing to note about that, and I think it was on Zach Lowe's podcast. You might have heard this too, but they were talking about like the shot variance of that game and how like if you go to those websites that analyze shot quality, like the Thunder still played well enough to win that game. It's just that the Lakers shot out of their minds and made a million threes. So like that's just like a shot variance game. It's not that like Oklahoma City it's not like the Lakers showed Oklahoma City something that they should be worried about. I think it's just that, look, the Lakers played great. I think they hit like 9 of their first 12 threes or something like that. And it was a runaway because they just happened to make a lot of threes. I don't know that you're counting on that happening many times in a 7-game series. So, I mean, I didn't get as bent out of shape about that as probably most people would.
Right. All right. Your fourth pick.
And that sort of leans into my fourth pick would be the Lakers and their center situation. So, I mean, like, obviously, they have LeBron, they've got Luka, like they're firing on all cylinders. They've been great. You know, they're going to be the 3rd seed. I don't know if they can survive against some of these Western Conference teams in a 7-game series with Jackson Hayes. So, and people will say, look, they're a huge team because they can start LeBron at 6'9" and Hachimura at 6'9", and they can play big even without like a traditional center. But almost any team that they're going to wind up going up against in a series of note will have a traditional center. So I just don't know if that will pose them problems down the line. You know, and I mean, look, in the first round, they could wind up playing Minnesota, which will give them problems of their own, because then you can throw McDaniels on Luka and, you know, Ant can switch onto him. And like they have defenders that Nickeil Alexander-Walker, like they have perimeter defenders that I feel like will make Luka's life miserable. Not saying that he'll play poorly, just that they will make him work for his points. I think that the issue of like, what do they have behind LeBron and even Reeves and Luka, obviously the aforementioned Luka, I think that they could run into problems given that they don't have a lot of front court depth. And I'm just curious.
If you're the Lakers, who you prefer to play, the Grizzlies, the Warriors, or the Timberwolves?
I mean, if I were the Lakers, I'd want to play the Grizzlies of all those teams, just because I think that there's unrest there too, and I think that even with Denver's unrest, they still have the best player in the world. I don't see Memphis having one of the best players in the world. And to be honest, I probably wouldn't mind playing the Warriors either, just because I feel like they don't have a big man either. So I feel like that issue of what do we do with Jackson Hayes for certain lineups? I feel like that's mitigated a little bit, given that it's not like there's a center that they need to have someone out there to go toe to toe with. And then also, I guess, like on a tangent to that, like how does Reeves hold up defensively in the playoffs? Like, are Luka and Reeves both guys that other teams can hunt defensively? So I mean, like I'm focused on the center just because like they tried to trade for a center right before the deadline, and then they did make the trade, and then, you know, went back on it because Mark Williams, didn't pass their physical. But like clearly they said with that proposed move that we need a center, but they played great without a center. But how does that show up in the playoffs? So I'm curious to see how that
right. Plays. All right, my 4th pick, 8th pick in the this draft. I'm going to go with the defending champions, the Celtics, and repeat chances. Now, they've been – look, I think what they've done this year is impressive, actually, being 100 and still – they're going to probably get 60 wins at 59 right now, I think, currently. So to get 60 still with all being 100 and with all the improvements in the Eastern Conference this year, I think it's pretty impressive. But yet if they played well last month and a half, but I still feel like this team is still beatable. I think it's still beatable. I think if you take away the volume of 3-point shooting shots they take a game, if you can get that down to at least a quarter less or even half, I mean half would be phenomenal. I think you can play them to a wash, and then because they have guys, they have really good basketball players. I was not a disrespect on the Celtics. They're a great team, obviously. They're champions. I get all that. But they're not guys that I would consider killers. Because when things go bad for Boston sometimes, and it's very far and few times it happens because they're too good a team. But when it does happen, it goes off the rails. If Tatum's off, that whole thing falls apart. And I feel like if you can get that team off the 3-point line, I feel like you can have a shot. Like if you're Cleveland, if you're even New York, I also even say Milwaukee to some extent, or even Indiana, if you can somehow find a way to equalize 3-point shooting, force them to take less 3-point shots a game and bring the ball to the basket and make it more of a, let's say, physical game. I guess we can make it more of a tit for tat kind of thing. They're beatable. I'm not saying going to beat them, but they're beatable. They're not this. I don't think they're this dominant champion that they're scary because their shooting is definitely scary. But once you take that away, then you can make it more than even ground. I think, to me, look, do I think Boston wins the East? Absolutely. Do I think Boston's possibly win the title? 50-50 chance if it's OKC in there. But I'm not going to sit there and say that this team is like, it's not like in past years, the Warriors win it. The Heat will win it. Or, what I'm saying? The Lakers with Shaq and Kobe. No, it's not like that. I think this team is beatable. And I think if you're disciplined enough to get off the 3-point line, I think that makes that series beatable for them. So I think I'm really curious on how Boston approaches this playoffs. How teams approach them, rather.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, I've talked about it all year when I've come on the show. Like, the thing that I don't like about them is that I feel like Tatum and Brown, because of how athletic they are, how skilled they are, they can get to the rim anytime they want, but yet they still Tatum will still settle and take 12, 13 3-pointers a game when he's not really like super efficient at it.
No, he's not.
And it's like, so you're doing the other team a favor in a sense, but it's like you're not getting downhill, going to the rim, getting them in foul trouble, going to the free throw line. Like, he does that sometimes, but it's like they basically allow luck to play too much of a role in their destiny, given that they can pretty much get any shot anytime they want. They are so intent on shooting threes that, to your point, I would just have guys stand out there 30 feet away from the rim and start picking them up and daring them to go inside the line. Because I don't know that they're willing to settle for only shooting 28 threes a game. I feel like they want to shoot 50. They'll settle for 40. But if you basically just give them inside the 3-point arc, will they just take those open shots, or are they going to try and force up the threes because this is a math equation that they're trying to solve?
Correct.
So I would try and throw them off their game and say, look, we're going to give you open jumper after open jumper inside the paint or inside the 3-point arc, even if it means sometimes in the paint, but we are not going to let you beat us from 3, and see if they're willing to take that. And my guess is that they are still going to try and hunt and force threes, even if it doesn't make sense to. So like you said, I feel like that could be something that throws them off their game. And if you have a good team, if you have a worthy opponent, the Knicks, the Cavs, or if you get to the finals, the Thunder, obviously, I could see that being their downfall. So I don't disagree with any of that.
Right. All right. Your last pick, ninth pick of the draft.
Yeah. So my last pick would be what happens with the Timberwolves. And the reason why I'll say this is just because they were a team that very easily could have gone to the finals last year. Right now, they could be in the play-in, which I feel like is a big step back. And given the new ownership, how much appetite is there for them to like overpay for a team that's considered like a 6th or a 7th seed in the West? Like, there's still going to be uncertainty about Randall. Maybe there becomes uncertainty about Gobert. They're paying McDaniels a lot of money. And then taking that further down the line, like the same questions we asked about Giannis, about Jokic, like, does Edwards, if he doesn't feel like they're willing to pay or overpay to put a lineup around him, does that cause him to get restless, I guess you could say. So, I mean, I'm looking at a team that is good enough to be a championship caliber team that probably won't be a championship caliber team. And what are the ramifications of that? Like if they go out in the first round, I mean, look, in the West, there are going to be several teams that had championship aspirations. They're going to go home in the first round. So someone's going to wind up being disappointed. I don't necessarily know if that's going to be the case.
Someone plural.
Yeah.
Someone's.
Someone's are going to wind up being very disappointed. I mean, like in the East, I'm looking at it and saying, okay, Cleveland's going to, mop the floor with Orlando or Atlanta or whomever.
Or Miami.
I guess they could wind up. Sure, they could wind up playing Miami, and in that case, I don't know if they'd mop the floor with them, just because I feel like they could still. Maybe they still win that series, but it's still challenging. But like I look at the East and I'm looking at I feel like it's a little more clear cut the way that it's going to go. In the West, you have teams that entered the year having very lofty aspirations. Like I don't know, Orlando thought that they were going to win a title this year, so I don't think finishing 7th is a big deal. I think that Minnesota finishing 7th is a big deal. And then what is the ramification? Look, if they finish 7th, they might beat Houston in a series.
Well, Minnesota did start the year slow though, and they caught fire at the end of the year. So I mean, massive roster change. You lose Cat, you bring Randall, you bring in DiVincenzo. They start slow. So yeah, they were a bit of a letdown, but they did get back. They did play better, So I give the credit to them also.
And they definitely have, but let's say they finish 6th and lose like a 6-game series to the Lakers. Like if you're getting bounced in the first round, to your point about Denver, if you're going backwards and then you have new ownership who maybe doesn't want to spend
that's true
top dollar for a team going backwards, where are the cuts made, and then what are those implications down the line?
Well,
so I feel like the Cat trade was a money trade more than anything else. That was to get off his salary.
Well, this is going to be the Julius Randle thing now.
Yeah,
Julius Randle Randle is the guy that he's a good player, but we don't want him. That's New York. And now if they lose LA in 5 or 6 in the first round, say they play the 6th seed, same thing. Okay, Julius Randle, because you're not trading and Edwards. Obviously, you're not moving that contract. Randle is the odd man out at that point. So, to me, the player who has the most to gain in this playoffs, not the most, but definitely one of the most to gain, is Julius Randle.
Well, Randle's going to be a free agent after this year. So I mean, that's
right. Unrestricted?
Yes.
Oh, so that means money more so now. Money now.
Yeah, but I mean, my issue would be, okay, if Minnesota flames out in the first round and then says, we made the Cat trade because we wanted to get somebody who was expiring a lot sooner. They didn't want to be paying Cat $60 million in 2 years. So it's like they just let Randle walk,
right,
and they get nothing, and they replace him with nothing. And then you also have Alexander Walker as a free agent. You also have Naz Reid, who can opt out of his contract and be a free agent. So you've got 3 like big impact players who are going to be parts of their rotation who could be free agents. And what if they only bring back one of them? What if they don't bring back any of them? I'm just interested to see, based on what they choose to pay, how that will shake out. And if they have an early playoff exit, that could impact who they pay and the decisions that are made going forward. And then ultimately everything will be around how that impacts Edwards.
Right. All right. Last pick of this draft. I have 2 options here, but I'm going to take this one here because it's the more realistic thing here. Is this Warriors thing sustainable in the playoffs? They played well since the Butler trade. They lost to San Antonio last night. A couple of weird losses last couple of weeks, but overall, bigger picture, they played much better. I think when that trade happened, they were 10th, I believe, in the West, and maybe even lower than that. At that point, they were definitely hanging in that playing area, the low end in playing area, and they played better since then. So right now they're 7. Most likely they'll be being 7-8, which means if they win their first game, they're going to draw Houston. They could win that series. They could. I'm not saying they will. I'm not saying they could. Then you get to the spot now. You get that 7th spot. You avoid OKC for the first 2 rounds, and then you could draw the winner of the Denver Clippers combo there. So the Warriors have a path here where they can find themselves if what we're seeing the last 2 months with Jimmy Butler is real, and playoff Jimmy becomes a thing. We saw in Miami how that works out. This team could be in the conference finals, and we're like, what the hell happened here? But I still have questions long term, not just this year, but the next 2 years, is this the fit? It could be the fit because, again, Jimmy Butler is a clear number 2 guy. This, as you've been saying for the last couple months on this pod since trade, and you and I both agree on this. The reason why the Butler trade worked, even though I still think that he did the right thing in trading him, because he's in the right situation. Jimmy Butler would have been number 1 in Miami, and Miami would have been marginally better. But the Miami Heat right now is still a play-in team right now, even if Butler's on his roster. So let's cut that noise. This is less to do with the Heat and more to do with the Warriors and just the fit and him being behind Steph Curry in that pecking order. So the Warriors, I think. Look, I have no delusions of grandeur they're going to win a championship this year. Nor do I even think they're going to make it to conference finals. But it may behoove them to stay in that 7 spot. You know what I mean? Because you're going to draw Houston first round, and then you're going to draw a combination of no, it wasn't Denver. I apologize about that. It'd be the 3-6 section of that, which would be LA and probably Minnesota. Which I'm not. I don't fear those teams. I got Steph Curry. I don't fear those teams. So, I mean, the Warriors are curious. I'm very curious of the Warriors moving forward. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's a good decision. I mean, it's funny to say this, but like, could I see them making the Western Conference Finals? Sure, because I think there's a pathway for it. I think Steph's great, Butler's great, all that. I just don't see any scenario where they get to the finals or win the finals. And it's not just because they don't have a center, in my opinion. I don't think they have enough shooting, which is weird to say about a team that got the best shooter ever. But like, I don't know that I trust Podziemski taking a bunch of threes in the playoffs, in a long series. Butler's not a 3-point shooter. Draymond Green's not a 3-point shooter. So, I mean, really the only reliable 3-point shooter you have is Curry. And like, if you're playing Buddy Hield, you're willing to live with all the other bad stuff that he does just to get his shooting on the floor. Yeah. And I wouldn't say that Kuminga's like this like knockdown 3-point shooter either. So, I mean, I feel like there's going to be a lot of pressure on Curry. And then if teams, if you play Minnesota and they throw McDaniels at him, or if they start doubling him, like, where is the other shooting, scoring coming from? I know Butler can score 30, but I feel like most of that will be done on layups, for shots, and at the free throw line. It's not because he's spacing the floor and like opening up the offense. So my concern for them, lack of a center and lack of outside shoot, like consistent outside shooting outside of Curry, would be my downfall, I guess, for them. But that's not to say they can't still go to the conference finals. I don't see a championship in this team's future. I think they made themselves better by trading for Butler, but I don't think it solved all their problems.
Right. And again, I'm over the long term, but so far so good for them. I mean, we'll see what happens there. Look, I could be wrong about this long term, but right now it's working for them. So, Greg, good job as always. Follow him on Twitter at Gee Hrinya. That's Hrinya. Did I get it right?
Yep, you got it.
Man, look at that. Boom, boom. Of course, follow him on Twitter, like I just mentioned here. Earnestly Podcast across all podcast catchers, especially on YouTube. We have a YouTube page, a channel at Earnestly Pod on YouTube, on TikTok at Earnestly Pod as well too. Greg will be back next week, of course, throughout the playoffs as well. Looking forward to that. Other than that, we will talk to you guys soon. And until next one.